Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Teal Talk. I have been waiting for this session. Uh, my name is Sav, and I will introduce the panelists in a second. I've been here at Tealium for about 5 years, and I grew up completely in the digital marketing space from my first job onwards. And I still, to this day, get surprised that I get to work here. So, why I'm excited about today is two reasons. One is the chat is about AI, which, as we all know, is all consuming right now. But the bigger reason I'm excited is who I get to interview today. So we have on our panel Jeff Lunsford, our CEO. Now, I don't think I've ever interviewed you, Jeff. So this is great. Captive audience for 45 minutes.
Yes.
You don't get to run away.
Exciting.
And along with Jeff, we have Jay Calavis, who has worn probably every hat that you can wear at a company from the beginning, from product to sales to marketing to everything, right, Jay? I can't think of anything you've not done.
Not finance or legal. They won't let me in there.
Not finance or legal. That's great. So, for our viewers and listeners, welcome. And if you have any questions, you want us to hit anything, please just drop them in the chat. We'll keep looking at them as the session goes on. But otherwise, just buckle up and get ready. So, Jeff, I'm going to start with you.
Yes,
What do you see as some of the biggest trends impacting companies and enterprises in 2024? And how is the C-suite responding to this entire AI tsunami that we're all getting?
Great question. So, I think it's starting with at the board level where all boards of directors are challenging all management teams to do two things with AI. Number one, figure out how to enhance the customer experience to improve top line growth. And number two, figure out how to operate the business more efficiently. The ZERP era, capital was free. Well, guess what? Capital now costs a lot more. And so all businesses are being challenged for efficiency. And then that's getting handed down to the operators who are evaluating all the amazing new AI tools that are available in the market and are saying, okay, we can do some amazing things with these models, and there are all sorts of different types of AI. LLMs are getting all the press right now, but there are a lot of other types of or use cases for AI and types of algorithms. And then as these operators evaluate these tools, they say, okay, well, where am I going to get the data to feed into these algorithms or to train these models? And that's leading to all sorts of interesting conversations within the enterprise. Where am I going to get the data to train my model? What data is actually consented so that I can even use it inside this model to begin with and still comply with privacy regulations so that we don't run into kind of the New York Times OpenAI problem where, they trained a model and now I'm not sure I can use it. So, there's a lot of reverberation from board level on down, and grow faster, get more efficient, all using AI. To do that, you need data, and then we'll talk about that.
Yeah. I feel like you gave so many layers in there, and we're going to dig into all of them. But Jay, I wanted to get your perspective. Do you think this applies universally across all industries? Like, how do you feel about this?
So I think the swell of excitement is creating, people to be cautiously optimistic about the opportunities of AI. AI is not new. People have been having ML projects and AI projects for a very long time. It is just the accessibility that has suddenly changed overnight, seemingly. So people have access. This is causing disruption in people's roadmaps. Like Jeff was saying, the board down, they want to understand how is this going to impact our business, be more efficient, build better relationships, et cetera. And so companies are seeking guidance on how do I prepare for this new wave of innovation. And then once we are prepared, what do we do? Where do we start? And how do we measure the impact to our bottom line, to our relationships? Because this is going to have a huge impact on the way in which we have dialogues with our customers and create a value exchange, because AI will change the way that we engage our customers.
Wow. Both of you mentioned this, so I think I'm going to go into this category next, which is customer experience. So the fact is that while AI has been around for decades, generative AI became so easy and so accessible in the last 12 months that that's what made all the consumers realize that AI can be transformative. So I wonder, and Jeff, I'll start with you. What are you seeing from our customers in terms of CX goals that they have now that AI is just ubiquitous?
Great question. So, I think that's everyone wants to enhance the customer experience with personalized and predictive types of dazzling events, throughout the customer journey, right? And we at Telium, what we think about that every company has a customer experience layer, and that's populated with a bunch of enterprise software systems. Your CMS, your MarTech stack, CRM, and then they have a back-end data layer where you get a lot of the data warehouse, data at rest. And new cloud data warehouses are emerging, and you have in-house data warehouses. And in the middle, you have a data layer, and because you really don't want to have a bunch of point-to-point connections between the back-end data sources and the front-end customer experience. And so that's where all these projects, tend to kind of get tied up is, all right, I want to create amazing personalized experiences in real time based on everything I know about these customers, predict behavior, give them pricing algorithms. But how can I do that when the knowledge I need to do that is perhaps in some other data silo somewhere? And so we're finding we can help customers with that problem.
Yeah, the data layer and the data silo remains as the two conversations that don't go away, right? And Jay, I wanted to ask you about regulated industries. When Jeff is talking about predictions and personalization and using data we have, how does this affect regulated industries? How are they looking at AI?
They have to be much more cautious because the stakes are so high. And I think it's really critical to understand that accessibility does not equate to readiness. Just because all of a sudden I have access to something doesn't mean we're prepared for it. And so I think you'll see regulated industries watching the other less regulated industries, move the needle and try things out and fail, right? And scrape their knees and take those learnings. And in the meantime, they'll be building in the preparation within their data feeds. They have to think about encryption. They have to think about PII and PHI and different regulations across the globe. Every single data set is going to have its own unique set of precautions and data readiness measures. So that amount of work is huge, especially in highly regulated industries. So what we're hearing is our customers who are in regulated industries, they're busy doing that work now.
That's really insightful. What I had noticed also was like banking, maybe 5 years ago, started modernizing all their customer experience touch points and their infrastructure. And then the last few years, it's been healthcare. So on the one hand, these regulated industries that were lagging behind are trying to catch up with modern customer experience practices. But on the other hand, travel, e-commerce, all these open industries are starting to realize they're going to have to learn from regulated industries how they have to manage data, how they have to be careful with PII and things like that. So in some ways they're merging, in some ways they're diverging, which I think is very
in
cool.
A strange way, the pandemic kind of prepared the regulated industries to start thinking this way because they did have to digitally transform so quickly in those critical touch points that no longer could happen for 2 years. And so a lot of that legwork had been done, the thoughtfulness of where they want to go when it comes to just being digitally minded and being more data focused. And now this is kind of the next phase of that. They're probably exhausted by now because they felt like they were just getting through that phase. And now there's a whole nother phase that they have to do. But the impact will be huge.
Yeah. And the privacy regulations that are being, promulgated around the world are industry agnostic. So really the bar is being raised to where kind of all industries are regulated, and have to adhere to these privacy things.
Yeah, that's such a great point because that's important. Like being responsible with data, especially with sensitive data, is so critical. And I feel like all the different tides that have come over the last few years have made everybody take notice. Today I was reading about the fact that OpenAI is saying it's hard to train models at that scale if you don't use copyrighted content to train the models. So that's become a very big complication that these models are dealing with. So Jeff, sorry.
Well, Sav, let me while it's on, so the data becomes the differentiator. So as we talk about increasing regulations, right, but more and more pressure to use AI, right, that is, now let's look at the AI tools that are available. Well, over the last 15 years, the algorithms have become commoditized, right? And the hyperscalers are giving you API level access to these algorithms. And so every company, the playing field's being leveled. 15 years ago, to do an AI project, you needed software engineers, you needed AI engineers, you needed data scientists, right? You needed all of that. And you also needed data. Well, today, if you look at the wrappers that have been put around these AI tools, you no longer need code level AI specific experts, but you still need data. And so what's happened is the accessibility, the cost, everything is driving towards where every single company on the planet can use AI, no longer just the big ones, but they all need to get the data. The data is being held back through privacy regulations. And so what you really need is to think about a new way as an enterprise of a kind of just next gen data collection, data consent tracking, and data filtering, data enrichment, and data distribution architecture, right? And it cannot no longer be kind of these point-to-point connections that tend to exist where you might have one system on the front end sending a file feed back to the data warehouse, and you may have 23 different systems. What you really need is kind of a clearinghouse for your data, a centralized air traffic control for your data. And it needs to be operating in real time, because you can't take batch file feeds that are a day or two old that have, perhaps trained a model, or maybe they're just stored in a data warehouse, and use those and remain compliant, right? And the fines, nobody cares if when they're fining you $1,000 per email, whether or not you had a batch or real-time file architecture. They just care whether you violated the privacy regulation, right? So there's all these interesting trends, but the big picture, the tools are being commoditized. They're going to be more and more accessible. And the data is becoming more and more sensitive and more protected. And so every single enterprise has to figure out how they're going to approach that, collect data, filter it, feed only their consented data into these AI projects to deliver those dazzling experiences that they want.
And if I was going to put that on a t-shirt, I would say data collection is a strategy, not an afterthought. And we've been saying it for years, the data layer versus just scraping web pages and taking bulks of data and auto tracking and things like that. This is that time in history where you really should be thinking about that data collection strategy.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think first time I met you, Jeff, you talked about staying pure at the data layer, and I think you've stayed true to that. And now it's becoming so clear that while all the roadblocks are shifting on how you launch AI for your organization, the data challenge remains, because it's in a case of an AI model, it's 100% garbage in, garbage out. So the better your input, the better your output. And that part of the process has not been unlocked yet. And I feel like this is where companies have to focus.
Yeah, we were in a large telco 2 weeks ago, and the team said, "Oh yeah, our C-suite keeps coming down and saying, are we ready to do AI?" And we say, "Absolutely, we're ready. But what data do you want us to use?" And then the data sits back in the various, in any big enterprise company, they're huge, data lakes and data warehouses, and they're typically owned and arranged by organizational structure. So, the marketing team has their stuff, and then the call center team has their stuff, and the supply chain team has their stuff, and the loyalty program team has their stuff. And this team was just kind of, throwing their hands up in there and saying, we have massive amounts of data, but we don't know which data we can actually use for these cool new AI tools that we're using. Oh, and by the way, when we go knock on the door of the call center team, they say, oh, we have our AI thing over here, so we're fine. And, what really is incumbent upon all these enterprises is to try to figure out how to get that holistic view of all that data, right, into one place, and then use only the consented data and then send that data into the AI projects. And by the way, depending on what you're trying to do with AI, it's a different filtered stream of the data, right? It's not a fire hose of all of it, right? Because if you're doing pricing algorithms, that's one set of data that you're going to get signal out of. And if you're trying to predict cart abandonment on a website, that's a different set of data. If you want to think about, next best action in a call center, that's a different set of data. So it really, all success in AI is dependent upon data, and data becomes the strategic differentiator that is going to separate the companies that are successful with AI, because everyone has access to the algorithms. Again, just assume algorithms are commoditized and there's cool new ones coming out. The price to train LLMs per token is going to go down 1,000x over the next 2 years. Just assume those are commoditized. So what will differentiate you as a company? It is what data you collect, how you can handle that data, making sure you're compliant, how you can potentially enrich that data, and then how you can filter that data for the specific purpose you're going to use AI and send it to the AI. And then, by the way, we haven't even talked about activation yet. So all these AI projects over here have output. Most companies, there are a lot of companies that have done really great prediction and scoring and audience prediction, and then they sit as output in a database. And it's not activatable, right? Well, Tealium's in the activation business. Like, there's no point in doing anything if you're not actually going to take action and modify a customer experience. So the activation post AI is just as critical as all of the data collection and control and filtering and enrichment pre the AI.
Every time, Jeff, you say this stuff, I just want to nod. But Jay, I think I cut you off.
I was just going to say the activation piece always comes into play now when talking about an AI project. I think every time we're delivering on an AI project of some sort, there's the getting the data into the system and then activating it. And I think the customers that I talk to, they like having a single platform where that continuous cycle of data is occurring, because they know when the data comes from Tealium, it's consented, it meets the criteria for success. Then it comes back to Tealium. We utilize it for in the moment engagement, right? Real time CX. And then we feed the output back into the system with the same guardrails in place. And that is really special. At scale, that's magic. These AI projects, all of a sudden, they're within reach. And they can set up one framework where they can trust that entire data flow at massive scale.
Yeah. So, I mean, we were talking about this yesterday. It's so easy to forget that algorithms now you're going to buy on the market, and most people are going to use the same algorithms for all these things. But you have to train it with your data. Then you got to fine tune it with real-time data. Then you got to send it data that you want it to use to generate the result in the moment. And then you got to use that result and send the results back in too, right? So it's that operation that still lives in your house. And you cannot just assume that that's going to get solved. It depends on your stack. It depends on your tools, your strategy. So that's where people are struggling now.
Yep.
So I would love to hear if you guys are hearing from customers. We talked about they want to go after this stuff. Are they talking to you, Jeff, about stuff they're struggling with, where they wish we could help them? Like, what are they saying to you?
Yeah. So, look, I think we're seeing a whole spectrum across different companies. There are companies that are trying to optimize their existing enterprise data architecture to try to figure out how to get what data they can into these new and easy to access algorithms. And those are the ones that are running into most of the roadblocks and the most friction. It's organizational friction. Who owns the data? It's also that those organizations, like I said, have a lot of their own AI projects. And so there's turf battles going on. The companies that are actually achieving success the most quickly are the ones that are taking a new approach. They're basically creating a new real-time data supply chain for AI. And you basically want to connect all of the points of data creation, right? So and different companies have different points of data creation, but just speaking generically, you've got, your website, your mobile app, your call center, the kiosks, if you're an airline, you've got in-store for point of sale. If you're a retailer, you've got healthcare data. So all that data should be collected in real time, consent tracked in real time. And instead of going into the backroom system and then trying to pull that back out someday, somehow for an AI initiative, you now have a real-time data supply chain where you're able to track consent, and you're going to feed it into your AI models. And you also will send it back to the data warehouse, right? But there's this new layer. I call it a enterprise data fabric, real-time, data supply chain, whatever you want to call it. And that allows you to bypass all the data ownership and stuff that, where you're trying to also then, if you have to extract data out of a data warehouse, you then have to do some data wrangling to get it ready for AI anyways. So why not just create a new real-time data supply chain, and the companies that are doing that, and then you can take filtered streams of that, subsets of that data, right? And put them in your various AI models, algorithms, whatever you want to call it. Those companies are achieving success. And again, it's less about having code level AI engineers on staff. It's more about having data strategists on staff. And it's not even data scientists. It's really understanding, okay, we've got this open schema, and every company, a hospital chain is going to have something different than a pharma, than a bank, than an airline, than a retailer. But you have this open schema, and you populate this data in real time from all the sources. And then it's more like a data strategist, someone that does understand what a schema is and what types of data are available, and someone that understands what these AI models want and need to get, to be valuable and to get valuable output, and who can work through all that. But that's not code level work, right? It's actually in a UI where you can create data elements and map data elements, and then pick filtered data streams, and then pick which algorithms you're going to feed them to. So the companies that are taking a new approach are the ones that are achieving success more rapidly. And there are companies that are in fact bogged down, and you go to the meeting after the meeting, and you go to dinner, and they're kind of venting to you how hard it is to even just cross organizational boundaries and get data out of the silos. And yet they're getting all this pressure from the C-suite that they have to do something, and do something fast.
Yeah, I had a work session with a bank, and it was the same conversation. Everybody had organization level goals, but they all wanted that same one unified data set, and they didn't know how to get to that. So like if your data layer strategy is a strategy in itself, then you can truly supercharge your data and make it available everywhere. But then, the word you mentioned so many times, consent, that comes up, right? So yeah. Jay, let me lob that to you. Like Jeff has mentioned consented so many times today. Where does that fit in this whole conversation?
Well, it's the first step. It has to be the front door of your data collection strategy. It's the front door step. Before anything happens, you have to understand, can I collect this data? What data can I collect? When can I collect it? And then live and die by those rules. One of the things that Jeff was touching on, which is nuanced but really incredibly important, is this notion of filtered consented data sets. AI projects used to be, give me all the data and I'll figure it out later. Well, that's changed. Now, these AI models are very selective about the data that they want, and they're becoming faster, right? You used to have to run these things in batches over 30 days, and you'd get a score, and you'd use that score the next time you saw someone. We're working with companies that are doing real-time AI, where we're sending them just the right data, right? The consented real-time data. They can run a model and send us back an insight immediately, and we can activate it. That's incredible. And the companies that are doing that, just like Jeff said, they're thinking about the data strategy. How do I collect it? How do I make sure it's consented? How do I transform it and enrich it? And then how do I round trip it really fast back into the CX layer? And then how do I propagate that across all my tools to create these incredible real-time in the moment experiences?
Yeah, the activation is key, in the filtered part. So, you have forecasting, you have predictions, you have natural language processing, you have fraud detection, you have audience segmentation. In cybersecurity, you have anomaly detection. There's all these use cases for AI. ChatGPT and LLMs have taken but trust me, this stuff's been going on for a decade or more in these large enterprises. And so, again, we see all sorts of use cases, and the opportunities are incredible. I mean, I think the next decade is, to me, as an old school person, this is the biggest thing since the browser.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah, biggest thing.
It definitely feels that way. Even the AI specialists are talking about how they were working on LLMs over 50 years ago, and they thought they had figured it out back then. And just like in 2022 is when it hit critical mass, and now suddenly we feel it's magic, but they've been working on it for a very long time.
Yeah, it's when I say it's going to get commoditized and more accessible. So anyone who's old enough remembers pre-browser, the text interface of the internet. And then, by the way, the browser moment wasn't a moment. It was about a year. You had to download WinSock and Trumpet and all, 3 or 4 things and figure out how to run them on your PC.
Yep.
And then, by the way, and then when that opened up, there wasn't a whole lot of content. There was like a boiling coffee pot, right? And then, so there's this, and now look at everything that's happened, right? And so we had the browser moment, or the browser year, that transition. That was a massive transition. The other mobile, exactly.
Yeah.
The other massive transition has been mobile. That has been amazing. This is absolutely as transformative. Every single company, like I said, I think everyone now understands it. ChatGPT was the catalyst.
Yep.
Opened up everybody's eyes. I was computer science at Georgia Tech in 1988, and we were studying neural net. This stuff is not new. What's happened is just all of a sudden, everything, the computing, the bandwidth, the processing power, the data accessibility, all of it just happened. Finally hit this moment, and now like I said, every board, every C-suite, every operator say that they know what's possible. Now, how do you apply that to your business?
I thank you for sharing that, Jeff. That was awesome. I totally agree. I think what ChatGPT and all the other bots did is opened everybody's eyes to the possibilities of AI. And so now all this investment that was forced now has just been unlocked. And then to pile on top of that investment are all the expectations and ambitions and goals that people are setting. Ashish has a question for us, which I thought is an interesting question. So I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
We're talking about Telium being the data layer. So he's asking, do I run my ML models in Telium, or I run it in a cloud and bring the output to Telium for execution? Like, he wants to understand, because we talked a little bit about that. I think he wants clarification. Thank you, Ashish. Great question.
Yeah, Ashish. So Telium has a product called Telium Predict, but most of and we have 42 customers using that. So it's up and running, but we also have an open philosophy, and bring your own model or keep your own model there. And you would collect data, enrich data with Telium. You would take the filtered data set out of Telium. This all happens in real time, by the way. You would feed it into your model. And then if your model can produce output, whatever that output is, that would then enrich a visitor profile inside Telium, which you would activate against, right? And so to Jay's point, we've had customers doing, predictions and scoring for 5 or 6 years using our data, and they would run it once a week, and they would then update the scores over the weekend, and they would activate all their campaigns. But now we can do that in real time, right? If the model that you're running can do that in real time, or Telium Predict can do it in real time as well. So we have an open architecture philosophy: bring your own model or use your own model. We want to solve the data collection, enrichment, distribution problem, and the compliance problem. We also want to solve the activation problem. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Jay, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say that, there are companies that want to be AI companies, and there's companies that will enable AI. Telium is an AI enabler. Yeah. We fuel this incredible ecosystem of companies that think about AI all day long. Many of them point solutions, but the cloud data warehouses as well, and then activating those insights. And there's kind of 2 different paths. One is if the model's been run, we simply check the cloud data warehouse at the cache level, see if there's an insight to be had. Next Best Action is a fantastic example of that kind of a relationship. And then there's real-time decisioning that happens as well. So, but most of our customers are using that incredible ecosystem of technologies and vendors in order to do their AI modeling.
Jeff and Jay, I'll leave this question open. I've heard one of you mention this phrase, time to model. And, I've heard of time to value, but what is time to model? I've heard you talk about that before. I think, Jay, you said that.
Yeah, this is a data wrangling concept, right? So we've heard it before and we use it now. The concept of how long it takes from data creation, meaning, like Jeff was saying, websites, mobile apps, kiosks, call center, how long it takes to prepare the data, get it to an environment where a model can be run, and then take that insight and activate it. So the time to model is dramatically decreasing with real-time infrastructure providers like Tealium. And our customers are excited about that because these projects, they have really, really high expectations, but the data wrangling drags organizations down. So the more prepared and ready that data set can be in a trusted format at tremendous scale, filtered to each individual use case, the time the model goes down very quickly. And that makes customers very excited and value gets realized almost immediately.
Yeah, and the expectation of customer experience for large enterprises is always set by the consumer tech companies, right? So when I can talk to, Siri on my phone or Alexa, or hey, Google, whatever, and I can get a real-time response that's AI fueled, well, I expect that out of my bank and out of my airline and out of my retailer also. Right. And so that's why we talk about having a real-time data supply chain, right? So you want to be able to collect, enrich, or predict whatever you're going to do with AI and activate all in real time. The same way that consumer experience where you have embedded like when I open my phone with my face, that's AI, right? And it's happening in real time. Mm-hmm. So the consumers have been trained now that the world's going to pivot to whatever they want and need in real time based on all of this hidden AI. Like I've been saying for a while, like the internet's going to disappear into the walls, right? It's not a screen-based interface. It's everywhere. It's your watch, it's your phone, it's your voice activation, hand gestures, right? Augmented reality. So, quote, the internet, it's everywhere. It's watching you. It needs to follow privacy guidelines, but there's just data about you being created everywhere. And that data is every enterprise company's most valuable strategic asset in our view, right? So it used to be your stores. It used to be the real estate. Might have been the steel mills, and your most valuable strategic asset is the knowledge that you have about your customers, not only the long-term historical knowledge, but the knowledge that you have in the moment, right? That in the moment experience modification fueled by AI, that is the holy grail, right? So what type of data supply chain must you build inside your business to deliver on that holy grail? In the moment, AI fueled personalized experiences. That should be the design goal of it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. Every business should aspire to delivering on that.
And every investment that a company makes, it should meet that criteria. How is this going to fuel that macro initiative? All of those real-time AI experiences.
Yeah.
And honestly, with cookies and all going away, things are going to become more about the contextual moments anyway, because I'm not going to know everything about you very soon, right? That's what everybody, all these walled gardens are putting up these barriers so that you're not going to learn everything about your customer, but in the moment, contextually, you can leverage everything you know and then give them the right experience.
Yeah, and then if you want it, so now you're going to get me excited about zero-party data, because in the moment, another thing that you can do and you should be thinking about as a company is, okay, AI is great, AI is amazing, and that's what this talk is about. But let me posit something. Sometimes it might be better just to ask them what they're thinking than to actually try to predict what they're thinking based on all the behavioral data and what your AI algorithms predict. And so we believe and are launching Telia Moments, which will be a zero-party data collection solution. And that will then, to me, it's like, let's just short circuit all this prediction and data collection. Let's just ask them what they're thinking. Right. But you have to be tracking what they're doing. And hey, it looks like you might be reaching for the box of Cheerios. Would you like $1 off, or whatever? So that's not the discussion that we're supposed to be having here, but
it is the intersection of those things, Jeff. It's like having probabilistic and deterministic data. If I have deterministic, I'm going to use it because I know it to be the truth. If you don't, you try to assume, you try to understand, but then those two need to work together harmoniously and intermingle within the CX layer. And that's the trick.
Yeah. Third-party data is gone. There's this concept of data sharing and second-party data. There's so many barriers to actually pulling that off. It was super hot and trendy last year. And, to me, it always seemed, because I've lived in regulated industries, like started financial services in 1995 when we launched Security First Network Bank, the first bank on the internet, right? Having dealt with regulations and data controls ever since then, I was like, the idea that two companies are going to share a whole bunch of data together, it may happen in an isolated incidents and isolated partnerships. But the idea that you're going to create these, two-party data sharing clearinghouses, and that's going to become this whole sub-industry, to us, like focus on first-party data, the data you already have, and then add some zero-party data for some from in the moment rifle shot, and then obviously enhance all that with AI. We think that's going to be the best practice for companies going forward.
I love it. So this fits perfectly into a question from Priscilla. Thank you, Priscilla. How can CPG brands leverage AI for customer acquisition? Are AI images and videos enough?
Interesting question.
I think it's, to me, Priscilla, it's less about AI generated images, but I think what you're getting at is a personalized, image that would appeal to that CPG shopper more than others. And yes, that's interesting. And that will be happening as part of the activation, delivering a personalized video or image. But there's also all this other data you have about that person you're creating that ad for, and you're trying to intercept their customer journey at a certain point in time. So I think, in that rifle analogy, the image is the actual bullet, but there's a lot of pre-planning on taking aim and picking what you want to actually deliver to them. So I think it's everything we've said applies to CPG brands, just similar to how it applies to big pharma, big banks, telco, everything else. CPG brands, some of y'all are direct to consumer, some of you have an intermediary, so that creates more opportunities. It also creates more data. It creates more complexity, and there's a lot of opportunity out there.
I think there's also a big continued focus on establishing relationships with customers in CPG. Things like warranties and whatnot, a way to finally get some record of who that individual is, and then leveraging data and AI to create a dialogue with that customer. There's a lot of disruption that's happening in that space.
Yeah, and one of the things that some of our customers that are either grocery stores or CPG brands, they use AI for recommendations, for trending, for figuring out what product might appeal to this customer, for grouping different customer preferences. So there's a lot of opportunity now, as Jeff was earlier listing out all the use cases. And I think as these models become a lot more accessible and your data strategy becomes ready, I think you'll be able to take advantage of these.
Just look at what Whole Foods has done, right? Because it's an entire data supply chain now. I pay with my hand at my local
It's
Whole
wild.
Foods. You think they have some data on me and that they're using that to create recommendations and offers and opportunistic, experiences? Absolutely, they are. And other CPG organizations are going to see that, learn from it, and adapt.
Yep. You were talking about Amazon yesterday, and once Amazon took over Whole Foods, everything changed. Okay, we have another question. Thank you for our viewers for sending questions. Please keep them coming. This is from Dr. Mohammad Nasir. He's asking what percentage of useful data is generated from all the data we have. Some stats are saying it's not even more than 40%.
I think it depends on the use of the data, right? And you have machine level data, and maybe only 1% of that is useful. But and then if you're talking about, let's say at the CMS layer, where then probably it's amazing. We have companies that have 2,500 attributes defined in their data layer with Tealium. And we have companies that have 400 attributes defined in their data. And we have companies that have only 40 attributes defined in their data layer with Tealium. So the great news, Dr. Nasser, is that when we say filtered data, you can filter that data at the front door. And it's really all filtered based on what you define as your schema. And so when we say that a company's first-party data is its most valuable strategic asset, that really all starts with an inventory of what are your potential data sources of first-party data, and then what data exhaust, what data is created by those sources. Those tend to be software applications, but they could also be hardware devices. And how can we tap into that data flow? And then which one of those, if we call that event level data. So how much of that event level data do we want to capture and map into the open schema that you've now defined with your attributes? And then how much of that will enrich visitor profiles? And then how much of that will go back into your AI models and all your other things for activation? And so this is an almost infinite amount. Like the average company today uses 250 software packages. Little old Tealium we have 600 employees, and we use 125 software packages. Every single one of those creates data. Maybe 60 of them have first-party data potential. So it all goes back to having a great data strategy and assessing what data is available, and then being thoughtful about what data you want to collect, enrich, distribute, and obviously tracking consent through all of that so that you can remain compliant.
I wanted to say thank you, Jeff and Jay. I've learned a lot today, as I always do, talking to you guys. Any last parting thoughts for our viewers before we end the session? Well, Jeff, if there was one thing they should take from this session, what would you like them to take?
I just honestly think the new real-time open data layer approach is the right approach. You don't need to use Tealium to build it. You can go build it yourself or shop the market for whatever. But that is the way companies will achieve success in AI. The algorithms, the models are becoming commoditized, and wrappers are being put around them so that you don't need to be a software engineer to use them, right? Just look at what's happening with ChatGPT for the average consumer. And so having that strategy and really understanding how to build that real-time data supply chain while remaining compliant, because we don't want anybody getting fined, is the right approach. And this is the moment. This is your first-party data is your most valuable strategic asset. How are you going to use it to deliver on that mandate? We think it's an existential mandate. We think companies that can figure out how to leverage AI and combine it with the data they have to deliver amazing customer experiences are going to be the ones that succeed and grow. And we think the companies that fail to do that, or that trip on their own internal organizational data silo and data ownership turf wars, are going to slowly get marginalized by the more nimble, more forward-thinking companies. So it's an incredibly important moment in the enterprise. And of course, we're here to help you. But again, it's more about just having the right strategy and then picking whoever's the right partner for you.
I love it. Jay, I would have asked you to end, but I think that was a perfect quote. So we're gonna end there, everybody. Thank you to our viewers for staying on. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Very grateful that we got to have this panel. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Jay, for your time.
Thank you.
And Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2024, the year of AI, looks like. Talk to you all again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.